I mean, frankly, if there is a Jew living in Israel who hates Netanyahu and doesn't want the war to be waged, who hasn't been on the BBC, I mean, I don't know where they are because they managed to find every single one. I think it was like 80-90% of Jews in Britain voting Labour. And I think probably not anymore. We've seen some horrific anti-Semitism in Britain against, a Jewish bakery. Like, what the hell? Some guy getting up at 5 a.m. to bake bread for has got anything to do with the policy in Gaza? I mean, I think we know what that's motivated by. Let's call it what it is. It's anti-Semitism.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Western Spirit from Israel. Today, we're speaking with someone who I've started watching regularly lately. So we're speaking today with Julia Hartley-Brewer. Julia is a TV presenter on TalkTV in the UK, and obviously here in Israel on YouTube Live, you guys can watch her. And if you missed it, Julia says on every show, you guys can go back on her YouTube channel and watch everything again. So don't miss it. Even though I'm not in the UK and have no idea of local stuff in the UK, it still is very interesting. It's sort of an anthropological experience. So, Julia, it's amazing to speak with you finally.
It's so good to finally talk to you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, it's really a pleasure. And the reason why I'm speaking to you now is because you have just come back from being in Israel about a week and a half ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you spoke about it. You had a monologue on your show, which went viral actually in Israel in all of the WhatsApp groups. People were passing it on. They did this captioning in Hebrew. So I don't know if you know this, but it was really viral. And I said, can you, I guess, tell us a little bit about your trip? What was it being in Israel after 2 years almost after October 7th?
Yeah. Well, by the way, I knew it went viral when the president, President Herzog, tweeted a thank you to me. I realised that. Yeah. Well, I did this monologue, and we've talked about it on my show a few times. This trip, it was a work trip. People saying, "Oh, you're off on your jollies again." I'm kind of renowned for liking my holidays, and it was. And I was with a group of there were 6 women on it. It was a work trip, but it genuinely we all agreed it was life changing. It was emotionally and physically exhausting. I think there was a beach at Tel Aviv. Saw it briefly. It was. We just did. I mean, there's so much related to October the 7th. Went to the Neroz kibbutz. We went to the military base nearby, and I've been following this all so closely. Been going to places where I've seen on social media, seen on TV, seen the room where young female soldiers were held captive and then taken. It's incredibly moving. Meeting families of hostages, some who've come back alive, some who are still held, some who they know are now dead in Hostage Square. We visit the Nova Festival site, and weirdly, one of the most sort of disturbing things for me was when we went to the site where they're storing all the cars of the young festival goers. And I did a video and I put it out, and it just keep going. I mean, it's like a minute long, just really quite fast, moving along. All these pictures and names of all these young people who died and died, who were murdered. They didn't just accidentally just stop living, did they? And it was incredible. The whole trip was so emotional, so upsetting, but also made me so angry that so many people in the world and so many people who bloody well should know better are frankly libeling the Israeli people and the country on a daily basis. But it also inspired me. I had not one word. We spoke to so many people, lots of very important, very influential people, but we were talking to, ordinary people in restaurants and everything as well. I met not one person who expressed hate, not one person who talked about in a negative, horrible way about, yeah, what we want to do to people in Gaza. I met no one who was, talking about war or nonsense about genocide. I heard only just regret and and a strong pride in the country and the strong sense of community and a need to just make sure it never happened again, to protect the people, our people, from this threat, doing whatever is necessary. And one of the really extraordinary things for me was seeing virtually every single street corner and every possible wall along the motorways, in the cities, in restaurants, just the pictures and the faces of the hostages, alive, dead, returned, still being held. The yellow ribbons, the waitress with the bring them home T-shirt, the solidarity, the unity, the sense of community, the sense of a shared imperative, and camaraderie was inspiring. I mean, beyond anything that I've ever felt in my own country. And it was something that I did a monologue about how the West does a lot of wagging fingers. Oh, Israel, you shouldn't do that. Oh, Israel, oh, you should be more like us. And my monologue was basically, actually, we've got a lot to learn from Israel. Israel can teach the West, not just Britain, America, France, Spain, Ireland, all the other countries who should hang their heads in shame at the moment. We've got a lot to learn from you guys.
But Julia, can I just ask you, just because I don't want to make this like, when you were here, did you see anything that you were annoyed at? Like, because it sounds like you just enjoyed like you
Um,
were inspired, you were
Can I say,
angry.
I live in central London. You also have people on electric scooters on the pavement. I messaged home and say, genuinely, well, I feel at home because he's really annoying people. No, I genuinely, it was overwhelming. And I don't think I was getting a skewed picture of society. And of course, it's democracy. Not everyone agrees with everything. People don't like Netanyahu, or they do like Netanyahu. They want the war to go this way, to go that way. They'd be willing to do this to get the hostages back, willing to do that. Of course, people have differences. And of course, these are always exploited by BBC and others in the West. But actually, that sense of unity about the need to protect Israel, the need to get the hostages home, the need to make sure it doesn't happen again. Your country is as one on that, and it doesn't matter whether you are, Jewish or Arab or atheist, or whether you believe, a believer or worshipper or not, whether you live in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, and black, white. That was a very strong message that came across.
Yeah, I think that Israelis should actually listen to you, because we're always saying that we're like the most divided people ever. And yet, when on the basic stuff, we might argue about the ways to get there. But on the basic stuff, we're pretty much like, yeah, we just want people to not kill us.
Yeah,
We want to have
too
people who
much to
are
ask.
been, yeah, exactly. We want people who have been hostage for 2 years
Mm.
and like look like they're dying of starvation to be like let out. We want, the world to be a little bit fairer, like hold us to a higher standard, but not crazy high. Basic stuff, and on the details, we're all fighting with
Yeah,
each
I mean,
other,
I
and
think
we
it's
hate
like a
each other.
family. It's again, we could all have little rows of, oh, and then she said this and he said that, but actually, we're on the same side, and that's where my frustration with my own government and so many in the media. That I mean, I've worked in mainstream media for many years. I was political editor of a national newspaper. I've appeared on many of the BBC lead programs many times, and Sky and ITV and Channel 4, and I am absolutely appalled at their coverage of this issue. And I consider it to be gravely dishonest. I have knowingly lied as a journalist on one occasion and one occasion only, and that was when a good colleague and friend of mine, my God, we differ on Israel and Gaza now, when we got Yvonne Ridley, when she was held captive by the Taliban in 2001. And I told a lie and got everyone else in the media to repeat a lie, that she was not weapons trained when she was, because otherwise she was going to be executed by the Taliban. I felt that was a justified lie. On no other occasion have I ever said anything that I know or believe to be untrue. And I cannot believe that a load of war reporters and experienced journalists working at many British media outlets and American outlets don't know that what they're saying a lot of the time is palpably, provably untrue, what they're saying about Gaza and Israel.
So why are they saying it if it's a lie?
God knows. I do try and tackle them off air and on. Um, it's part of a narrative, isn't it? But it's like people who say, trans women are women. I mean, they're not. I mean, live how you want. And with J.K. Rowling, live how you want, wear what you want, call yourself Sheila. I don't care. That's great. As she said, go to bed with anyone who'll have you. I mean, not my problem. Have a great life. I'll respect you. You respect me. No problem. But when you make a statement, trans women are women, well, they're not, so that's a lie. But people say that. Our own Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has categorically said that, and basically said anyone who doesn't say that is a bigot, until he changed his mind. We're yet to see the reason why. And that's the same thing on Israel. So one minute you were a democratic state, you were our ally, and the next minute you weren't. And the reason why, same with the trans thing, is that women are victims until there were men who wanted to be women who then became bigger victims. Jews were victims, and then they found another group, Muslims (brackets Palestinians), who were bigger victims. And in the hierarchy, in the victim Olympics, on, let's face it, largely the liberal, so-called progressive left, then they win. They win. So you must be the bad guys because they are more victims than you are. Unfortunately for you, you've got a government that's built the Iron Dome, and with US help as well, and you actually have a government which, whether you voted for them or not, their main job is to keep you alive and safe, and so they do so. And you have these warnings, and you go into shelters, and the world right now is organised around keeping people alive. Shame on shame on your government, because if they were like Hamas and they deliberately put every civilian, particularly children, into harm's way deliberately on every possible occasion, then you could be victims too. So I mean, it's up to you, really. I mean, that's the
Yes, it's always
madness going on,
about
right?
right. It's always
How
about.
dare
I
you
remember
not
when
die? Not enough
AOC.
of you have died. That's the issue.
Yes. Proportions. We need to be one for one. Every terrorist that dies, there has to be an Israeli soldier that dies, and if not, it's unfair. It's really an unfair thing, and we should also give them the Iron Dome so they can defend themselves from us.
Absolutely.
Um,
I know
uh,
you laugh,
I
but
want to.
genuinely, there are people who, I mean, this is the craziness that we are in. I mean, it really is quite terrifying. I don't believe there is any journalist at the BBC who doesn't know for a fact that Hamas has been building tunnels with a long-term plan, that this was a terrible terror act, and people were murdered and beaten and tortured, and women were raped, and bodies mutilated, and children were killed, and that hostages were taken, that they're being mistreated, beaten, tortured, raped, um, starved, and being held by Hamas deliberately, as part of a weapon of war. I mean, there's not a single one. The BBC doesn't know that. No one in the Labour government doesn't know that. Around that, they're completely blind and stupid. Okay, but um, so they know that, and they also must know that the body count. I mean, every single death is a terrible, terrible thing of an innocent child. Do I think it's a terrible thing that 23 to 25,000 Hamas soldiers have died? No. I cheer. I raise my glass to every terrorist that is slaughtered, because that's a good thing for you, for the West, and for civilians in Gaza. But they continue with this lie. They continue the pretense that this is a uniquely unfair, immoral war waged in a terribly genocidal way. They know the meaning of the word genocide. They deliberately choose to misuse it. They know that the people predicting that there was going to be mass starvation and people being starved to death in Gaza, that's been going since what, December 2023? Well, still seem to be an awful lot of people. No doubt at all, some people are not getting enough food. Absolutely, we had problems, but I get that. That's not a mass campaign of starvation or genocide. They know that, but they say it anyway, because that's the acceptable narrative. That is now what you say if you're a good person. That's where we are. So facts don't matter. Facts don't care. Feelings matter.
Yes, and that is, I guess the direct question is it basically another example of the fact that all of these journalist institutions, the BBC,
Mm,
Sky News in the UK,
yeah,
a lot of the newspapers in the UK have been totally captured 100%. There's no dissenting opinions on a lot of these places.
yeah,
Literally, like on your show, you'll bring all these crazy people on. Sorry, I mean, I
yeah.
don't want to get your guests angry that I'm saying this, but a lot of them are, in my opinion, have crazy ideas, but you'll bring them on and have dissenting opinions on a lot of these shows. There's literally everyone thinks the same.
I mean, frankly, if there is a Jew living in Israel who hates Netanyahu and doesn't want the war to be waged, who hasn't been on the BBC, I mean, I don't know where they are, because they managed to find every single one. No, but I mean, it's laughable. The effort they go to is extraordinary. Um, no, you're right. There is no dissenting view, but it's been like that in a lot of areas. Whether it was, I say, like on the trans issue, whether it was Brexit, uh,
BLM, yeah.
yeah, BLM, absolutely, and a lot of these issues, and it's just, here is the accepted view, and if you're climate change, another one, and if you don't agree with it, if you don't sign up to it all entirely, you're one of the bad people. You're not one of us. You're not a nice person, and that's narrative. Now, I've been on. I mean, they would say the wrong end of a lot of arguments over the last few years, whether it's anti-lockdown, anti-the EU, pro-women rather than pro-men, who think they're women, and all these things. I'm kind of used to it now, and I, as a general rule, when everyone says something is the case, I always think, But I also did this old-fashioned thing. I know it's crazy as a journalist. You're a journalist, I'm a journalist. This is a mad thing that we used to do, which was we look up the facts. We look up what people who disagree with us are saying, and then we say, well, hold on a minute. Regardless of who's saying it, is it true or not? Are there facts that back that up? Now, it's bloody hard to get a hold of, neutral facts. I mean, there is nowhere in Britain to go anymore, and I think in America too, for a neutral, fact-based, no opinion at all, just what has happened. How many people died? What is the evidence for this claim? Or and things like that. It's virtually impossible. But I try and put everything together, so there'll be things that I'll go, no, I don't agree with you on that. I do agree with you on that. I thought that was the job. I thought that's what we did. I thought that was what, frankly, voters should do in a democracy: seek out the facts, rather than this idea that if X says something, it must be good, and if Y says something, it must be wrong and it must be bad. And I think that's a very strange way of going about things. And you can always tell the people on the wrong side of the argument because they want to shut down debate. Whatever the subject is, they want to shut down debate. And we've seen that massively over Israel. Again, your Prime Minister, Prime Minister Netanyahu, at the United Nations last week, and it was very orchestrated. There were loads of people in that chamber who would never normally be there, who went in so they could walk out. Largely Arab nations, a lot of nations who are totally beholden to the Russias and the Chinas, who are, paying their bills. That's what the UN's about. They were largely autocratic, non-democratic countries making a big moral statement. They're all perfectly happy to be torturing and murdering their own people, but not you, Israel. I mean, and they go along to the place where countries of different views and other parts of the world are supposed to listen to each other, and they made a really big moral show of not listening to Netanyahu, and they think that they're on the right side of history. That's the giveaway that they're
Yeah. Julia, also, your government recognized Palestine as a state,
not. Don't
along
even. I'm
with,
still struggling with that one. Still struggling not to swear on
I don't
air.
understand what it is exactly. Who are the leaders? Where is it? There's Gaza, the West Bank. Nothing is
Yeah.
connecting to both areas at this point. Just on a practical level, it doesn't at this point seem to make sense. Unless it is used as a political cudgel against Israel. There's no other reason for it. But I just wanted to ask, you have a labor government that, at least when I was growing up in the US and in the Democrat Party also in America, I think we could compare them at this point. They're basically the same. In terms of Israel, they were middle of the road, more or less. They were, Tony Blair, with all of his problems, didn't hate Israel.
No.
His backbenchers, as you like to call them, didn't push for him to blockade Israel weapons and all this kind of stuff. And yet today they totally hate Israel. And the leader, who has an Israeli or Jewish wife of your country,
Jewish wife,
is using it actually in the press conference with Donald Trump, say, my wife, we have extended family in Israel, I know. And then he says what he's going to do to screw Israel.
Yeah.
So it's very, as a Jew type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, do you have the token
That's
Jew?
my
As a
get out
Jew,
clause.
I hate Israel.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like I have a black friend. But I guess the question is this only like real, like internal politics? You have the 5 members of parliament who were voted just on Gaza.
The MPs for
It's a
Gaza,
funny
yes.
thing. Yes. Douglas Murray told me that, like, and I agreed that it's such a weird sectarian thing when the UK people are voting for people in their districts, not to clean the roads, to clear the potholes, to make life easier for them, to poverty, all this type of things. No, they're voting for something that's happening far away that the member of parliament won't have any.
There's no
Nothing
influence
really
over,
to
but
do
also,
with.
by the way, these are always MPs for areas that are really poverty-stricken areas that really have populations who need help. No, look, it's utterly bizarre, and it is about internal party politics. There's no doubt at all about this. It's Keir Starmer. I mean, it's a failed bid trying to shore up his support in the party. It's not going to work. He will never be, left-wing and pro-Palestine enough. So that won't work anyway, and then he'll upset the other side. But you've got to remember, I mean, until this, until Jeremy Corbyn, the previous leader, was in office, and blatant anti-Semitic supporters, and a lot of his policies. I mean, he's never met a terrorist he doesn't want to be friends with. I mean, Jews. I think it was like 80-90% of Jews in Britain were voting Labour. I think probably not anymore. And Keir Starmer made a really big thing in his leadership that he was going to change on this. Now, it is very important. I think we can agree that one should separate, Jewish people in Britain from Israelis, from the Israeli government, from the war in Gaza. These are all separate things, and we've seen some horrific anti-Semitism in Britain against, a Jewish bakery. Like, what the hell? Some guy getting up at 5 a.m. to bake bread has got anything to do with the policy in Gaza? I mean, I think we know what that's motivated by. Let's call it what it is. It's anti-Semitism. It's racism. It's hatred. It's nothing to do with the Palestinian people. We know that. The thing about the government is under a lot of pressure. But you know what? If you want to be a moral and good leader, if you want to lead, you don't fall for that sort of pressure. You say, no, we're not going to do that. And the most outrageous thing over the summer was that our Prime Minister made a statement that he was going to recognise Palestine if Israel didn't fulfil 4 key tests, in terms of ending the war, the ceasefire, and more humanitarian aid, and all of this. No requirements on Hamas, and even to their credit, the BBC said, why are there no requirements of Hamas? And he basically sent out a message, as did Macron, as did Mark Carney in Canada, and the Australian Prime Minister as well. Basically, keep the hostages, carry on as you are, and you'll get exactly the prize that you asked for. And when our Prime Minister says this is not a reward for the October 7th massacre, well, it's all very well you saying that, Prime Minister, but when the leaders of Hamas, what's left of them, say it's a reward for what happened on October the 7th and justification for it, then I think we should believe them, because they might know what they're saying. So I found that absolutely appalling. I think appalling, immoral, and absurd from a man who is literally obsessed with international law. It's all he talks about. Can't do that because of international law. International law is, international law that. Well, international law requires when you recognise a state, and it will be recognised. It's already recognised. They've been given a sodding embassy. We had the health secretary and other cabinet ministers standing behind the Palestinian ambassador, raising the Palestinian flag. We've got that absurd situation where the international law requires a state, as to have clear borders, one clear government. They should be able to recognize, be able to sign treaties, but they can't do any of those things. And again and again, Keir Starmer has said this. I mean, this is so ludicrous. He said Hamas cannot be rulers of a Palestinian state. And at the same time, but there will be free and fair elections held. Well, A, who's going to oversee the elections? There haven't been elections in the West Bank or Gaza for 20 odd years. And P, what if the Palestinian people decide, as the polls suggest they would in both Gaza and the West Bank territory, to vote for Hamas? I mean, there's a reason why Fatah haven't had an election for all this time for the Palestinian Authority. What if they decide to vote for Hamas? So is Keir Starmer saying that we, in our infinite wisdom, as the former colonial power of British Palestine, that we will tell you who could be in charge? And apparently, the latest wheeze is that our former Prime Minister Tony Blair is put in charge.
Yes,
I mean,
he's going to be in charge here.
talk about being colonialists. I mean, you
Yes.
either think these people deserve their state, and you either think these people have a right to rule themselves, or you don't. I mean, it's moral nonsense, it's practical nonsense, it's legal nonsense, and it's such as it ever happens, it will be an absolute disaster for all concerned.
But also, Tony Blair is someone who looked at in Britain as someone who pretty much destroyed a lot of the country. So he's going to come here and do the best job he's done, like you. So he's not like a very successfully, when he's looked back historically.
I mean, he has he did broker the Good Friday peace agreement in the end in '98. There's a lot of anger still about the Iraq war. I have to say, I still
Right.
think, it wasn't the wrong decision the way it was carried out. I'm all in favour of ousting despots who murder their own people as a general rule. He's not as loathed as a lot of the media likes to pretend. If he had stood for another election, when he stood down, he would have actually he would have actually probably won it, to be honest with you.
Uh-huh. Okay. So that's good to know. Okay. Now I want to talk about Jews. I want to talk about Jews in the UK.
Yeah,
So I've had friends who are Jewish, who were born in the UK, raised in the UK, lived in London where you are,
yeah,
and now have come to Israel after October 7th,
yeah,
after the largest terror attack massacre of Jews since World War II. These Jews have decided that being in Israel during a war with seven fronts, Iran
yeah,
and Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas and the Iraqi militias, and I probably messed up a few other
yeah,
ones, they've decided that here, for them, it's safer than where you are.
yeah.
Can you explain what is happening?
Well, I know, I mean, Melanie Phillips, who's a fantastic writer and thinker, moved over. I will say Lee Kern, who's a fantastic screenwriter. I actually been following him on social media, met up with him, delighted to meet up with him when I was in Tel Aviv. I can completely understand it. I think partly the solidarity and the camaraderie in the community, which I mentioned earlier, but also that feeling that what happened in 1930s Germany is happening again. It's happening in Germany, it's happening in France, it's happening in America, it's happening in Canada, and it's happening in Britain very much. I live in North London, basically the largest Jewish community in the country, and I've got very good friends I've known since school days. Who are Jewish, and I remember one of my best friends. And I said to her about a year ago, I don't remember you ever mentioning anti-Semitism when we were teenagers in the 80s. I don't remember. Was that something you didn't talk about? You didn't think I'd understand, or was it not happening? She says, absolutely not. I mean, she went to the Jewish free school, in North London, famous school. And she said, don't remember any incident at all ever feeling, any anti-Semitism. And now we've had numerous instances, absolutely right, low level. Not that there should be anything that's considered low level, much worse level. I live in the area where a few years ago, and it's extraordinary, it's a few years ago now, a bunch of blokes decided to drive down from some northern city, a whole convoy of cars waving their Palestinian flags, and a bunch of Muslim men driving down the end of the road in a very Jewish area, shouting, with a loud hailer, we're going to rape your women, we're going to rape your wives and rape your daughters. Well, you're talking about my friends, my daughter's friends. You've made it a bit bloody personal now. And even then, that was a big wake up moment to me that something horrible was going on. And guess what? Those men have never been charged. They're on camera. They've got their license plates. They know who they were. It took ages for them to even be questioned by the police, and then they decided not to charge them. I mean, we've had people go to prison for a year for tweets, for goodness sake. These are people who are directly threatening to rape children, to rape girls and women because of their religious and ethnic identity, and that for some reason not considered enough of a crime in this country. Now, if that isn't a big red neon flashing sign that we are in very dangerous territory, I don't know what is. Now, that was way before October the 7th. And it's got considerably worse since then. The fortnightly marches through central London are an abomination. I'm a free speech campaigner. I very much defend people's right to protest and to peacefully, you know, these marches are only peaceful because the police don't pick out the criminals. They allow it to go on. If you're wearing a Union Jack flag, you're carrying one of those. You will absolutely have the police in their riot gear come in and take you away. But people who are being blatantly not pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, celebrating October the 7th, blatantly anti-Semitic flags and signs. No, they don't get arrested on the spot, and that's the only reason that the police don't go in. It would be violent, and they deliberate attempts to go past synagogues. Incredibly intimidating. I know many Jewish people who just say, "Central London is a no-go zone for me on every other Saturday." That is clearly blatantly unacceptable. If black people were saying they couldn't do that, if gay people were saying they couldn't do that, people would be rightly horrified. And yet it's a free pass given. And I just don't think the authorities get it. And if there's anything where people talk about who is doing this and who is the problem, you just get accused of bigotry, Islamophobia, and whatever, ignoring the issue that we did import a lot of this problem. Obviously, there is an underlying level of anti-Semitism that permeates, I don't know, the West society. Is something I find utterly incomprehensible. I just don't get it. I never understood it. But I think people like me grew up in sort of liberal, lefty households, that it was just something of the past. And it's sitting there. It was nascent. The moment Jeremy Corbyn became Labour leader in 2015, I mean, it just exploded out of nowhere. And then we've got a large Muslim population. I don't think the average Muslim person in this country wants to get involved in politics at all. I'm sure they just want to get on with their daily lives, like Muslims around the world. However, we have a radicalized element. We've allowed radical political Islam in our mosques, to be preached in many schools as well, people radicalized online. And we have imported, over a couple of generations, incredibly strong anti-Semitic feeling. And the police like to hide these figures, but the vast majority of these assaults, they're by people of a, they're largely not, Anglo-Christian heritage, and we've imported this problem, and it makes everyone uncomfortable, because you've got a lot of groups that are regarded as the victims, who may not be the victims in this scenario, and it doesn't compute for our authorities. It doesn't compute for politicians, for the police, for the judges. They've been told for years that these people are victims, and now you're the victims, and it doesn't make sense. And we're just into mad territory. But I think so much of it, there's the historical aspect, there's what's happening in the Middle East, but I think so much of it comes down to this, this identity politics of looking at people, judging people, and accepting people only on the basis of their sort of immutable, characteristics. I was raised that you completely ignored those. I had lots of friends I didn't know were Jewish. I mean, I'm an atheist. It's kind of irrelevant to me, other than, oh, you're not free on a Friday night. Okay, fair enough. Oh, I can't serve you pork. Fair enough. Other than that, it's not. It's not, it's your business, it's my business, it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant to whether we can work together or be friends or have a smile on the train in the morning. And yet now, you know, your color of your skin, your religion, your ethnicity, your identity, whether you're a man, woman, gay, straight, queer, trans, whatever. These are the only things that matter to a lot of people. And I think it's all part of that. And Jews somehow went from being the victims at the bottom of the pile to somehow weirdly, you're now worse than white people. You're at the top of the pyramid, and you're definitely the baddies, because white people are definitely bad, and you're white now. You weren't, but now you're white, and it it's a form of madness. That's what it is. It's a form of madness. But yeah,
Yes, it's a
we are in
sickness.
mad territory.
Can I just ask something that, if we're talking about uncomfortable things,
Mm.
um, and I think you even spoke about it on your show today, actually, because I listened in the beginning about the whole debate now about migration.
Yeah.
Your prime minister is now calling Nigel Farage a racist because it, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of now, but I just want to ask if we're at the point of no return. You mentioned the fact that Brits, I guess red-blooded Brits, red-blooded Americans. I'm borrowing the phrase. They don't have any children anymore, pretty much.
No.
I mean, when you were in Israel, I assume when you were walking around, you saw lots of kids.
Yeah. It's very
It's just
noticeable.
the thing here. Even secular Israelis have 3 kids and up,
Yeah.
which is unbelievable. We're above replacement rate, even
Yeah.
if you take the ultra Orthodox out of the picture. We're the only Western country that's still above
Yeah.
replacement rate. And actually, we're having more kids every year. So
Yeah.
that's another problem, actually. But in
In
the
terms of
UK,
the changing demographics in countries, yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. So the only people in the UK that are having kids are Islamists, it seems to be.
Well, no, it's
And
true. It's been Islamists and Muslims. I mean, we've got to separate
right,
those
right.
two, haven't we? I've got no issue with
But
anyone
they
being
also,
Muslim. I mean, it doesn't bother me.
no, I
Why
agree.
should it? It's someone's personal religion. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, but there is a minority
Hmm.
of Islam. Sometimes they say it's 10%, 15, whatever, but the more Muslims there are, that minority also grows.
It's too big a
And
minority.
so,
Well, I would say one is too
yes.
many, but we're in the hundreds of thousands. Yeah, way too high.
So
Yeah.
are you worried? Are
Yes,
you worried that you're at
everyone
the
is.
point of no return at this
Yes, I
point?
think even the people who pretend they're not worried are worried. Yeah, absolutely. We have a very, very serious issue. Um, and that's why, I mean, that's something that Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform UK Party, has been talking about. And again, what's interesting is the Prime Minister at the weekend, in an interview, calls his new policy that he's announced in terms of deporting people who either have no right to be here because they've arrived here illegally, or they've overstayed a legal visa, like a student or a work visa, or they have got here legally. They may have been given what's called, indefinite leave to remain, settled status. But actually, you know what? They're not actually net contributing. They've been living on benefits. They've got a free council house. They're getting stuff that British people need, and they're getting it. Why are we? Why are we importing people who don't actually make a contribution to society? Many, particularly from the Indian subcontinent, but again, let's talk about it. Mainly from Pakistan and Bangladesh, the women often not working, not speaking English, not integrating at all, and the like. I mean, not having the same issue with people from India, largely, who are very much integrated and doing far better in the schools than many native-born Brits. So, I mean, there are completely different demographics there. But he was basically saying we should be, saying to people, well, actually, we did give you settled status, but we've changed our mind. We're changing the law, and if you can't earn enough to be a contributor, I'm not sure why we should offer you and your entire extended family a home in this country and pension and house and all of that. This was derided as racist and immoral. Those are the two words the Prime Minister used, racist and immoral. And then hilariously, 24 hours later, his own Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, announced at Labour Party conference in Liverpool today that her policy would be that anyone who came here and wanted to stay here would have to have a certain, higher wage, show their English skills, show they're a net contributor, have a cleaner criminal record. I mean, this is pretty bloody basic stuff that you would require of someone coming to live in your country, would you not think? The only thing that was different was that Nigel Farage wanted to backdate. So if you were already here, it would also apply to you. That is what apparently made it racist and immoral. I mean, the British people, no one can work out because Nigel Farage never mentioned people's race. I don't care if you're from Canada and you're as white as can be. If you're coming to this country and you're on the dole and you're in a council house, I'm not entirely sure why I want you in my country. We've got enough layabouts of our own and low earners of our own. I don't think we need to import them. I find it extraordinary. The idea that I would say, oh, hello, I think I'm just going to come and live in Israel. I think I've got a job. I'm not earning very much, but actually after a few years, after 5 years only in Britain, 5 years, not going to work anymore. Can you put me up? I'd like my home, please. Can you subsidise me and my kids? And I'd like to bring my brother and his family and my cousin's kids, my uncle from Leicester or where. I mean, why on earth should the Israeli people pay to support me? It's obscene. It's a joke. But apparently, thinking that is not good for our country in Britain, that makes you racist, according to our Prime Minister. Put it this way, it's not going to end well for him. He is already on a poll over the weekend. I mean, this is the most unpopular Prime Minister we have ever had.
This episode is brought to you by Ayn Rand Center Israel. We meet every alternate Friday to study and discuss the philosophy of Ayn Rand, author of The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. The topics range from ethics to politics, reason versus faith, aesthetics, psychology, and much, much more. This is the only place in Israel where Ayn Rand's unique philosophy is accessible to you, and you're welcome to come learn all about it. It's a great opportunity to learn and meet really interesting people. Attendance is free, and first-timers get a free book. We meet every alternate Friday at the WeWork in Serona Market, and we like to keep the intellectual discussion going afterwards with some great food and drinks. Click the link for more info on Ayn Rand Center Israel.
Wow.
And in
He's only been
less
in
than a
power
year,
14
right?
months. I mean,
A little more than a year. Um, is that also? But in your way, it doesn't work like we have it, where the government falls and you have election. They change it in their own party, so you can have a crazier person in. It's not like they have a very normal party where you have moderates. They seem to all be crazy.
no, they don't. I mean, they think that, to be fair, you see, the Labour lot, they think they are the moderates, you see. They think that anyone to the right of them is like, they think I'm far right. I mean, I grew up on the left. I don't think I'm remote. I think I'm completely centrist. The left wing in, I think, both America and Britain is so insanely extreme leftist. They don't realise the rest of us are going, where did you go? I mean, that's the reality. The idea that you should imprison people who stir up violence and hatred and commit crime, that you should deport people who arrive here illegally or clearly swinging the lead, or who are overstaying visas, or I mean, we've probably got about 2 million people like that in this country. I mean, why the idea that it's controversial that you wouldn't want those people in your country, I find utterly bizarre. This was kind of the point of the nation state until about 6 minutes ago.
But also, you at the same time, I just want to mention shortly, and we can go on to the next topic, because I just find it amazing. This guy, this comedian that originated, that he was from the UK, but he lives in Arizona, I think, and he came now. Like, it was a crazy story. They arrested him with like 6 policemen because he had 3 tweets
Graham
on
Linehan.
transgender stuff. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And at the same time, like you're saying, these mosques are putting out these sermons where they're telling to like kill all the Jews and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And no one's arresting them. No one's even investigating them. At
And
least
that you can
as
beat
far
your
as I
wife
can.
and it's perfectly
Yeah,
acceptable,
yeah,
and you have to chastise your. No, it is madness. And I know Graham Linehan, the comedian. He's basically, his career was completely destroyed, and he's an absolute hero of mine, because he was one of the men who said, well, hold on a minute, clearly men dressed as women shouldn't be allowed in women's bathrooms or hospital wards or in women's prison cells. I mean, this is obvious stuff. And he basically lost his entire career. I mean, he's one of our most successful comedy writers. Lost his entire career, lost his family, abuse. It's an ongoing court case, which is why he was coming back to Britain. And the idea that this lovely, gentle, middle-aged man would need, I think it was 5 armed police officers to meet him off the plane at Heathrow. And he was appearing in court 2 days later. They knew he was coming back for a court case. He was publicising it. They knew where he'd be. But we've had numerous cases like that. I've had good friends, Alison Pearson of the Telegraph, police turning up on her doorstep on Remembrance Sunday about a tweet that she'd written months earlier. This keeps on happening, and only one side are getting arrested. It is, yeah. I mean, good luck. I mean, all I'd say to police was that here are things I'm going to say on air and in public. Let me know when you're coming. I'll put the kettle on.
Um, Julia, one last thing on this, I guess, branch of topics is the protests we've seen. We had the big Tommy Robinson protest not too long ago.
Yeah.
How do you, I guess what's interesting to me about it, and I just want to get your take, is that he used to be a figure where everyone's like was scared to say that maybe he has a point.
Yeah.
So like everyone was like, oh my God, Tommy Robinson, I'm not even going to mention his name.
Yeah.
Like he's the Voldemort
It's easier
of
that
British
way. I think we all
politics.
decided.
Yeah. Right. And then you don't even have to talk about where he's right and where he's wrong, because he himself is the problem. And because of the craziness, at least to me it seems, of where the left wing in the UK has gone, people have gravitated to him. So meaning they've actually, in a way, hurt their own cause by being so crazy. They've pushed people to him.
They made him. They created him. This is the thing. Look, I mean, I get a load of grief from Tommy Robinson and his supporters, and he always says, "Why do you call me a racist?" Well, because you've been caught on tape saying things that I would consider racist on a number of occasions. But I largely tried not to talk about him. But yeah, he had this march. I know lots of people who went on that march. Never been on a march in their lives. I know people who went on that march who are either mixed race or black. I know an Iranian woman who went on the march saying, "I'm really proud of being in this country. I wanted it." I know people who they said it was like a village fete atmosphere. It was warm and lovely. There were some horrific speakers at the end of March. Most people didn't see them though. They never made it that far. There were so many people. But this is the thing. Thing about Tommy Robinson is he has been right about a lot of stuff, and he was saying a lot of stuff very early on because he was a working class lad. He grew up in Luton, just north of London, and where we were seeing some of the largest sort of enclaves of newly arrived Muslim immigrants, where we were seeing the lack of integration, the lack of assimilation, and an assertive political Islamic ideology. And he was speaking out about it, and all credit to him. The trouble is, because he's been in trouble with the police, because he was basically English Defence League he was involved in, which was an outright, blatantly, openly racist organisation. He then left, but he was part of that organisation. He has, I think, travelled a journey over the years. he's claimed to be a political prisoner. He's not. When he's gone to prison, it's always, frankly, bang to rights. He's a personality. He's been taken under the wing from various different American, Canadian sort of benefactors. But yeah, some of the things he's been saying, whether it's on grooming gangs, the rape of children by Pakistani grooming gangs, some of the stuff he's been saying about needing to take on this threat, yeah, it's true. However, he comes with so much baggage. He actually, weirdly, he made it harder for other people to talk about this stuff. Now, I was talking and writing about this stuff from 2000. This was stuff I was writing in a column in a national newspaper from 2000, and on radio, going on the BBC as a guest and saying the stuff, and then being derided as a racist. Never, I don't think I have a racist bone in my body. I wasn't raised like that by my parents. They would disown me if they thought I was. And being very careful with my language, because it is important to be careful to make the difference between an Islamist, say, or a Muslim, or whether it's a relation. I mean, I couldn't just have no interest in someone's color of their skin. I don't know why that would be remotely relevant to anyone. But he made it really hard for people to talk about other things. But people are moving towards him and the movement he represents, because he's saying, someone's got to stand up to the lunacy. He's not the crazy person in the room. They are. When we have a prime minister who says that people who are angry about little girls being slaughtered by a crazy man with a knife at a Taylor Swift, you must have heard of Axel Rudiger-Barnes, the Southport attack. When people are angry about that, and he thinks they're just far right. When people want to carry their Union Jack with them, when they want to wave the England cross of St. George, and he does think that they're all racist, and it's shameful and embarrassing. And the only flag they like is a pride flag or the EU flag with those yellow stars. They constantly deride people. Yeah, you flag waver, you're a flag worshipper. These people will march under the flag of the European Union every day of the week. They just don't realise that every time they shout bigot, racist, fascist, far right at someone expressing perfectly normal, reasonable opinion about borders, about thinking that when you move to a country, you should integrate and assimilate and adjust your culture, your values, and your beliefs to that country. That is an unreasonable thing to expect when we bend our culture all the time. I mean, that's one of the things in Britain, like this idea. Well, people don't want Muslim people don't want to have non-halal meat, so all the schools in a certain area have to only serve halal meat. Well, I'm going to vote no on that. I think that's unreasonable. The idea that we should all bend to a minority, especially once they become a majority in an area, I think is very, very, I think it's very sinister. I wouldn't go to live in Saudi Arabia and then think that everyone should bend to my views. I just wouldn't go to Saudi Arabia, full stop, because I don't like the culture. I don't approve. I don't want to go somewhere I'm a second-class citizen. But I don't think it's reasonable to go move to a country and then say, I want everything to change to how I want it to be. I think we used to just call that rude.
Yes. Two more small things.
Mm.
Number one is, I guess, exactly what you said, but I just want to maybe understand why you have been in a lot of these newspapers, and I guess we have in the morning like a boardroom meeting of all the journalists, what we're going to write that day, all this kind of stuff. You've worked at numerous places. You know people who I guess it's safe to assume are considered British elite.
Yes.
In the journalism and
I
politics.
live among them. I'm one of them,
yes,
apparently. I
yes.
go to their parties and everything.
I feel bad for you. No, but parties are not my thing. But I guess, and I have a perfect excuse because of the kids. So, but my question is, it seems just from afar that there is a sort of mindset among your country's elites where they feel almost ashamed to be of their own culture.
Not almost. No, they are.
Why?
I mean, it's like Democrats in America thinking that, America was founded on racism. What a load of abject nonsense. it's white guilt. It's this liberal white guilt. It's this idea again. It all comes down to identity politics. It all comes down to who's the victim, who's the perpetrator, and it comes back to, really sort of left-wing ideas about oppressor and oppressed. So that's where, again, you're oppressors now because you're a colonial state. I don't know how you're a colonial state in the Middle East, but apparently everyone's decided that you are. And that's what it comes down to. It's this idea that, oh, we come from a rich country, isn't that awful? Because those countries over there aren't rich, and we're largely white and they're largely brown or black, and so that must mean that we must have exploited them in some way. And yeah, of course, the British colonies weren't treated wonderfully. The British Empire wasn't always perfect. I tell you what, I've done enough traveling around the world to know that I'd rather have been colonized by the British than most other colonizing nations over the years, and most people in those colonies will tell you that. There's a reason why there's Commonwealth of Nations and countries are still part of it. But it also just comes down to, again, this sort of idea that if we're rich, we must have done it by making other people poor. So that's that, and also that that we're just lucky. The people in the West, people in Britain, are just lucky. We're just lucky. It's just happened. We just woke up one day and everything went well. No, I mean, there was a Judeo-Christian culture that had a crucial role in the direction of our country. There were, working class people, aristocrats originally, but then working class people who fought tooth and nail, died for the rights that we have. They weren't given to us by the EU or by anyone else. We fought for them. Women fought and died for the right to vote. It didn't just happen out of nowhere. And a lot, we gave the Industrial Revolution to the world. You're welcome, world. So many amazing things. Some of them culture. I mean,
The Magna Carta.
yeah, I mean, but music, Shakespeare, TV, comedy, pop music, film, television. We had an extraordinary impact on the world. In the same way we do, Jews, your overrepresentation by an absurd amount for Nobel Prize winning. Some cultures have contributed more to the world than others. We're one of them, and for some reason we're supposed to be ashamed of it because yes, we once were involved in the Atlantic slave trade. Well, no one seems to have a problem with the leaders of those West African nations who themselves rounded up their own people and sold them to the white slave traders. No one's got an issue with that. I mean, it's just a nonsense. It's just a nonsense. But yeah, whether it's our political classes, largely certainly on the left, civil servants, media, certainly academia, teachers in primary school, all the way up to PhD level, across the board, those people have somehow taken in this notion that everything British is bad, it's immoral, it's based on historical unfairness and criminality. They ignore what we did give to the world. They ignore the fact that we were the first empire ever to end slavery, and that we, until only 20 years ago, were still paying off the debts of the cost of doing that. Genuinely, we were still paying that for 200 plus years. They ignore the fact that we alone stood firm in Europe against the Nazis. We were on our own, for goodness sake, fighting for ourselves and also for Europe's future. They ignore all of that, and it is utterly bewildering to me that anyone could have that level of hatred for their country, not just our country's past, but our country's present, because there is this general view among that elite in our country that voters can't be allowed to be in charge because they'll make the wrong decisions. They do things like vote for Brexit, or they say they'll vote for Nigel Farage and the Reform UK Party. They're obviously nasty right-wing bigots, and that's why we need to stay in the EU and have bureaucrats and technocrats ruling us. That's why we need to be in the World Health Organization and have them tell us when we can and can't leave our homes in the event of a pandemic. That's why we need to have international conventions on human rights to tell us, so to know what rights we have. They genuinely believe that they and their fellow technocrats should be in charge because we are uniquely awful people. I mean, it's quite bizarre when nothing in our history suggests that, and most things in our history suggest the exact opposite. I find it bewildering. I am so proud to be British. I think it's a wonderful country. I've lived abroad. I've worked abroad. I travel all the time, and yeah, it rains here. A lot of the things don't work very well, but my God, I will never be able to give up queuing and sarcasm, which are our two greatest character traits. Those are the things that make our country really great.
Yeah, well, we're not very good at queuing here, so I'm not even going to get into it. Uh, I want to. I just have to add one thing before I say goodbye to you, is that there seems to be, with this trend of hating our own culture
Yeah,
all over the West, not just the UK. You
yeah,
mentioned the US, where I grew up until the age of 14. One thing that seems to be part of that is this, that there's a race to show how much of a victim you
yeah,
are, and everyone is trying to show how much of a victim they are, and the more of a victim, the more you win on the social credit ladder, or
yeah,
whatever you want to call it. I just remembered when 5 years ago we spoke about this off air, that I started losing my eyesight, and there was a sort of, you can make a split second decision when they tell you you're going to right now go blind. I mean, the trajectory is that I'm supposed to go totally blind in some time in the future. And the decision you make at that point was, I can be on government benefits and just
yeah.
do nothing with my life and be a victim and cry all day.
Pity myself.
Or
Yeah,
I can continue going out with my wife. I can try to get technology that works so I can write in the newspaper as long as I can still do it. And I'm sure there's other things that I can do. And
yeah,
I made the decision to, I'm not like, it's not, it was just like obvious that I'm not going to give up on getting married to my wife,
yeah,
who would not marry me if I would be a bum sitting at home. And like, there was no
yeah,
even hesitation. There was one day of being sad, and after that I just continued.
yeah,
And my job, thank God, was very helpful. But my point is that I think that if I was in America or in the UK, I would probably think much harder about it.
yes,
Meaning, there is no woke culture here so much.
yeah,
There's the culture that explains how everyone should be a victim is
yeah.
almost non-existent in like Israeli culture.
Mm.
Like
And
people, you
as it
mentioned this.
was non-existent in Britain and America. I mean, I went to school in
Exactly,
America in the
exactly.
1970s, and it absolutely wasn't the case there. Certainly, when I was growing up, yeah. I mean, again, and again, this whole thing, this class issue that we have in this country. My two best friends and my husband all came from very working class homes, no money at all. My parents came from working class homes, went to good, academically selected schools, state schools, and then got to university, and their lives, all of them, their lives have been, completely changed by that. Um, it is it's something I knew you see hugely more so, by the way, in the upper classes in Britain and in America. Long COVID exists in only two places: America, East and West Coast, right? And in Britain, largely in London and the home counties, because it's just largely middle class women, middle age. I mean, honestly, it's unbelievable, and it's sort of, really, does this uniquely affect people in certain postcodes? I find that unlikely. Um, but this is something that has been, there was a whole thing for men, was that we don't talk enough about mental health. We don't talk enough about mental health. Well, yeah, we should talk more about mental health. People shouldn't be ashamed of, having mental illness. But then it just became, we talk about nothing but mental health. You can't say this word, you can't say that word. It's your whole identity is now your mental health. And not even physical, just your mental health. And for girls, unbelievably, if you look at the biggest celebrities, other than the Kardashian people, and I still don't know what they do for a living and why people talk about them and their bottoms. But other than that, all the biggest female celebrities, actresses, singers, they're really big online. Why? Because they talk about their troubles, their fights with bipolar or trans identity or depression, whatever it is. Now, whatever their problems, I hope they sort them out. I wish them the best. But this competition for who's got the biggest problem, it is, as opposed to getting on with life and going, oh well, as you say, right, so this is what's going to happen to me, right? I'll either just have to get on with life, or I'll just pity myself forever. um and I think we're all allowed a bit of self-pity when we've got a bad day, or but yeah, it's a complete change. And again, it's going to be the downfall of the West, because if you think people in China and Nigeria and India, the countries, the massive economy, you think they are allowing their children, that sort of navel gazing. I mean, you're completely deluded. I mean, kids in British schools are constantly told to, talk about their mental health, is discuss the reason why they've got a problem. We allow people on the grand scale not to go to work at all forever because they get a bit of anxiety and depression, completely and utterly, therefore making it impossible to give the correct help we should be giving to people who have genuine issues, like, I mean, really life debilitating
Wait,
issues.
Julia,
Mental
can
illness.
I just stop you? Do you mean that if I say in the UK and I get a psychiatrist to say that I have a mental health problem, I get government subsidies and I don't
No,
have to work?
no, you don't have to see a psychiatrist. You simply tell the benefits office in I'm not joking. You simply, you can go on Google and it will show you keywords to say. If you say, yes, I have felt suicidal, I feel very depressed, you will be given benefits. They're higher than your unemployment benefits, and you will get them. You're supposed to be reassessed every 3 years. Realistically, you won't be reassessed at all,
Oh my God,
and
you
you
have a
have them for
crazy
life.
country.
And then you also have access to a cheap car. You get a priority for housing. Yeah, I mean, we have like millions of people. I mean, there's an incentive to be a victim.
You have a crazy country.
We have an absolutely insane country.
Like,
This is
what
why
is
it was
going
so nice to come to Israel. It felt like, no, really, it felt
It's
like,
not like we're
like this is
perfect, but come
it's a
on.
can-do culture of positive people. There I am having to, download an app to know where I'm supposed, if there's going to be an attack on my hotel, I need to know where the bomb shelter is. And yet these people are way more positive, not feeling like victims, and gung ho, and pulling together and helping each other. And it was, as I said, it was extraordinary to be around. And I remember thinking, God, if we could have a bit of this in our country, frankly, without the immediate cause, the horrific cause that you had, we would be in such a better state. But we've got soft, and we've just, we said, if you tell your child that they're a victim, you need to look. It's the equivalent of, I remember, my daughter, when she used to, when she was 3 years old and she'd fall over and graze her knee, I'd pick her up and go, oh, never mind. Off we go, ups to Daisy, off we go, rub her knee and off we go. And then you just carry on. And they go, okay. Went to nursery and suddenly it was a big deal. They had to fill out an accident form and they had an ice pack and it became a big deal. And you think, well, there you are. You've just made it a big deal to fall over. Well done. And we turned our whole population into children who need ice packs. That's what we've done.
I wouldn't survive in your country because I knock into things all the time because I can't see. And I would probably be asked all the time, where
We
are all
give you
these
one
black and
big
blue
ice
marks?
pack, literally.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I saw just at last anecdote I saw a few days ago in Tel Aviv on the beach. Two young guys, probably before the army, were
Yeah,
having a pillow fight. And some
brilliant.
guy walked by from, I think it was the UK or Australia or something, and he said, where we live, they wouldn't allow you to do it because it's too dangerous and it could cause bodily harm. So the police would. I was
Don't,
like, I wouldn't
don't.
be able to live in such a place. It's too dangerous for me. I'd rather knock into things and no one say anything than everyone be like, it's just.
Don't leave your home. You might hurt yourself. Yeah. No, but we are in that territory. Genuinely, we're in that territory. People have lost their confidence. They've lost their self belief. But again, if you go to school every day, you told you've got, you've got a mental health problem. If you just go, you just feel a bit miserable on a rainy morning, you've got a mental health problem. If your parents got divorced, well, that's a life debilitating problem for life. If you're not top of the class, you have to have a label saying you've got some other learning disability, and then you tell them that everything about your skin color, your culture, and your identity is immoral and wrong and racist and horrible and responsible for all the world's ills. And by the way, the world's about to die because of climate change, another complete lie. And you shouldn't have children. You shouldn't bring them into the world. But no wonder everyone's so miserable. I mean, what a world to be brought into. I grew up in the 70s and 80s when the positivity, the belief that the world was getting better and fairer and nicer. And guess what? It is. Loads of young people, they think the world's about to die in Britain and America and many countries. They think that the world is getting poorer. There are more poor people, more people are starving, there are more wars, and everything is terrible. Rubbish. I mean, just rubbish on every possible metric. The world as a whole is a better place to be. There is never a better day to be born than today, other than tomorrow. The world is getting better, and we are telling all our young people in the West that the world is a terrible place, and it's partly their fault.
Yes, and it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because
Yeah.
if everyone is depressed, then the place becomes a depressing place.
Yeah.
Julia, Julia Hartley-Brewer, I had like 1,000 more questions, but
I probably
I
yapped
want
on
my
too
wife.
much. I apologise, but you
Yeah,
got me onto some of
no,
my
no, 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 no. It
topics.
was good. Oh, it was good, and I enjoyed it. And I think I would say that most people don't have integrity, like you said, and uh, people that are willing to stand up and say, like, I came to Israel, and it's not, you know, like, it's a good place. You guys, I know you
Good
hate it,
place.
but it's pretty good. People are pretty
Sort
nice.
out the
There's no
sort out
genocide.
the people on electric bikes and scooters on
Yeah,
planes.
exactly.
Well, we haven't managed to sort it here, but you just sort that out if you could,
I'll work on it. Even though, like, for me, it doesn't bother because I just take the taxis everywhere. So, for
Right, for some.
but I get your point. So I'll work on that, and I appreciate your moral courage and honesty. And yeah, thank you so much for being who you are and doing what you do.
It's
And I'd love to
incredibly
have you on
kind of you.
anytime, whenever you want.
Yeah, well, it's been incredibly kind of you. Thank you. And I say thank you for everyone who been so hospitable to me when I came to Israel. And I will never, I consider this to be an existential battle between, Western civilization and darkness. It's a black and white, evil, moral issue. There's nothing complicated for me on this. And I will always stand up for the Israeli people's right to be safe in their own country, and to not be required by my government or other Western governments to agree to something that they would never in a month of Sundays ever agree to.
I agree. Well, I agree, obviously. But thank you, Julia,
Thank
for
you.
everything. And I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.